Hello, my name is Evan DeMarsh of the Trends Journal. It's a great pleasure today to be speaking with Professor Mohammad Marandi from the University of Tehran. Professor Mohammad Marandi, thank you for joining the Trends Journal.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Are we living right now in a law of the jungle where if you're a country and you do not have a strong military that can ward off and resist attack, are you in danger right now? Does diplomacy play any kind of a role right now in the world?
Yes, I think we are at a stage where, due to U.S. policy, countries across the world are threatened. The United States weaponizes literally everything that has to do with the economy, and it uses the military as well, as we've seen in Venezuela and on numerous occasions over the past few months. And I think that is going to lead countries to rethink their defense capabilities and to rethink their alignments. Many are going to distance themselves further from the United States and to look for alternatives for protection, because at least for the moment, other countries are not threatening multiple countries across the world the way in which the United States is right now. Venezuela, I've been there on multiple occasions. I have friends there. I'm in constant contact with them right now. But it is not a country that had major defense capabilities. And what will make things very problematic for the United States is if the United States actually puts boots on the ground, because Venezuela is very mountainous. It has many forests. A part of the Amazon is in Venezuela, and the traditional supporters of President Maduro and his allies are from the traditionally disenfranchised, and the working class, the lower classes, economically speaking. And these are people who are not going to easily give up their status, and they're not going to relinquish a political order that attempts to prioritize them despite all the sanctions. In other words, they are people who are usually more steadfast when it comes to politics and potential violence. So the United States can obviously easily dominate the air. They can bomb, they can kill, they can murder, as they've done. But if they ultimately want to control the assets on the ground, they're going to have to be there, or their companies are going to have to be there. And if ordinary Venezuelans are unhappy about that, then I don't think that will easily be capable of. They'll easily be able to. They'll be able to sustain it with confidence in the long run.
We saw the administration talk about why Venezuela was important. We started off with the drug dealing and the narco terrorists in Venezuela. We saw that evolve now. Now, Rubio was on an interview yesterday on some Sunday show, and he said how there were malign actors from Iran and Hezbollah who have grown roots in Venezuela. And so this is essentially the first, opening salvo, if you want, if you may, into this conflict with Iran, that this is the first way to cut off Iran's influence in Venezuela. How much does Iran influence Venezuela, and is Rubio accurate when he makes those assessments?
Iran and Venezuela have good relations, and Iran has helped Venezuela when the Americans were trying to destroy their electrical power plants and shut down their refineries. The Iranians sent engineers there to help them out, and the Venezuelans have been very friendly to Iran, and Iran is very friendly to them. But I think it's quite obvious for anyone who is sane and knows a thing or two that the two countries are very far apart. And it is quite paradoxical that the United States and Western media in general, mainstream media, likes to depict Iran as weak and floundering and falling apart and economically devastated and in perpetual crisis and on the verge of collapse on the one hand, yet it's has a huge influence all the way on the other side of the world in Venezuela, right alongside the United States, let alone Hezbollah. So, yeah, I mean, even as I said, I've been to Venezuela a number of times for conferences, and I don't even think that if I mean the Chinese influence, the Iranian influence, the Russian influence, all of that together is not really all that great in Venezuela. They do business, but as I said earlier, I don't think, from my understanding, Venezuela doesn't even have extensive defense capabilities to ward off attacks from a major power, and which has strong air power and naval power. Its capabilities are on the ground. If they're invaded, there are a lot of people who are willing to fight. I know that for sure. But these are just excuses that the Americans make to do what it is that they want to do. Just like the narco-terrorism accusations, they were fake. And then very shortly afterwards, they went straight to the point. It's all about oil, energy control. And so whether it's narco-terrorism or Hezbollah or Iran, or, these are all just excuses to convince the naive in the United States, because Americans are, many Americans, a large segment of American society is very ignorant about the world out beyond their borders. And it's the most propagandized country in the world. So it is easy to convince a significant segment of American society with propaganda.
I heard one analyst who I respect, he said that there's a reasonable chance that the U.S. took over Venezuela or ousted Maduro in order to have access to the oil, especially if Israel and the U.S. end up going to war with Iran. You spoke to me previously about how Iran would not sit back and take any kind of aggression lightly, and would strike oil infrastructure in the Middle East. Do you see that as a reasonable assessment of what happened and why Trump, while Netanyahu was in Mar-a-Lago, went forward with this raid in Venezuela? Do you think that a war with Iran was on his mind, or does that have not much to do with it?
I've heard this from someone very credible who's a very good friend, and I didn't argue with him about it because I wasn't thinking about it at that moment. But what comes to mind for me is that if there's a war between Iran and the United States, not like what we saw last time around, where the Americans carried out a single strike and the Iranians retaliated and destroyed U.S. assets in Qatar, contrary to what Trump said, that when he said no missiles struck, 6 missiles did strike, and there's clear evidence that major damage was caused to the U.S. base there. But if the United States decides to get into a conflict with Iran, then I think Iran will devastate U.S. assets in the Persian Gulf and U.S. interests in the Persian Gulf, and those tiny Arab regimes in the Persian Gulf, oil and gas-rich regimes, family dictatorships that host U.S. bases, they will be fair game. They'll be complicit. And if the oil and gas from West Asia is cut off, and the Caucasus for that matter, then that would be many times what Venezuela, many times what Venezuela is currently producing. And even if the United States gains full access to the oil fields or to the energy resources of Venezuela tomorrow, which is not going to happen, and it's not even clear what's going to happen in the months ahead. We don't know. And if something does happen, it's not clear what ordinary Venezuelans will do about it. But if the United States gets access, it will take many years for them to develop those oil fields. And the oil from Venezuela is very heavy oil. You cannot crude oil in different countries have different characteristics, and refineries are made to deal with certain types of oil. So you can't just take any sort of oil and give it to any refiner and expect the refiner to be able to produce whatever it is they produce with just anything you give to them. So I don't really see that as being an accurate assessment. If there is war between Iran and the United States, let's say in the next few months or the next few years, and as I said, it is an extensive war, then I think there will be a global economic meltdown. The U.S. economy will collapse. European economies will collapse. It will be catastrophic for everyone across the world. But there's nothing that Venezuelan oil or gas or anything else could do about it.
I want to shift now to Iran, the protests that are reportedly taking part in the streets and the unrest against the leadership there. I thought it was striking that Mike Pompeo took to X over I think it might have been the weekend, or maybe it was last week, and he wished Mossad agents taking part in the protests a happy new year. When a person like Pompeo, who's really not dumb, he was a former Secretary of State, he knows what he's doing.
Former head of the CIA too.
Former head of the CIA. When a person goes like of his stature in the United States, when he goes on X and he writes a message like that, he has to know that that's going to stir up some feelings, and he has to know that that's going to be seen by a lot of people and scrutinized. My question is, obviously he did it. Why do that? Why put that out there? Is it so brazen that he just doesn't care that gets out there like that?
I don't know. I mean, first of all, the riots are not very significant, and they haven't been at all. On the first day, we had peaceful protests. They were about the falling rial, and they were protests at the central bank, and they passed off without any difficulty, no arrest, no violence, no police intervention, and that was it. And then on day two, we saw small groups, very well organized, wearing face masks in different towns and cities, coming to the streets, and for the most part, violent. There was on day two, there were a couple of on three campuses, I think, like the University of Tehran, there was 100 or 200. But the University of Tehran and the medical, there are two universities, the medical and the University of Tehran itself. The medical university and the University of Tehran combined, I think they have 50,000 students. So 100 or 200 students are not going to really have that much of an impact. But in general, on day two, from day two onwards, these were just small groups in different cities, groups of 50, sometimes 100, usually very violent. And these numbers are falling. And we haven't. I've from what I've been hearing from friends, they continue to fall. So it's not really that significant. It's not significant. I mean, they have attacked police officers. They've killed a number of police officers. Some attacked a military base, and of course, wherever in the world you attack a military base, you're going to have casualties. The armed forces are not going to allow anyone to take a military base. But they're egged on by Persian language media based in the West, Iran International, which is funded by Western agencies and the Israeli regime, and is based in London. It is calling on people to bear arms. I've tweeted that today, a clip of that. I mean, if any TV channel from the non-Western world would say such a thing about a country in the West, that TV channel would be sanctioned and it would be taken off of satellites. But they would be banned from being visible in the West or elsewhere. But they can do that to Iran and get away with it very easily. So they are violent, but they're not significant. Why did Pompeo say this? I don't know. It doesn't make sense because it's only proving to the Iranian people that yes, this is not indigenous, this is not normal, this is not spontaneous, and this is being carried out by foreign intelligence agencies. I think what Pompeo did was probably very harmful for the rioters, and it exposes them further. But I think it is sort of in line with the way in which the United States behaves under Trump. Everything is blatant. We own Venezuela. We own the oil. It's ours. We may kill. Trump was implying that he may murder the acting president of Venezuela if she doesn't do what he says.
Because a heavy price. I think that's what he said.
A heavier price.
A heavier price than Maduro.
What's a heavier price than being kidnapped and taken to prison in the United States? There's only one thing that I can think of, and that's murder. And then, of course, Colombia and so on. So this sort of behavior and language, I think, is what is sort of linked to what the first question that you asked. Are we living in a new era where it's the law of the jungle? And the United States is basically, its leadership is behaving like someone who wants to live in the jungle.
My last question, I promised I wouldn't keep you too long. It's very late in Tehran. I'm in Los Angeles, so it's only midday out here. There's almost a sense of hubris in the Trump administration and with his friends in politics You saw Pete Hegseth give a speech, and he said Maduro, like Iran, FAFO, like F around, find out. That's what he said. And it was criticized even among conservatives on social media. It looked a little embarrassing. But also, one thing that I felt was striking, I don't know how to put it on while I'm on with you, but there's an image of Lindsey Graham with Donald Trump and a hat that says "Make Iran Great Again," and it shows what looks like an autograph by Trump on the bill of the hat.
Right.
So that, I guess, goes back to my question I asked before with Pompeo. What is the point of Lindsey Graham posting something like that? That, in my view, when I see that, not if I'm an Iranian, I would say, why is Lindsey Graham interfering like this? What's happening? How does that? What's your take on the message behind such a post from Lindsey Graham?
In general, the problem that the United States has, the political regime, is that their understanding of Iran, and I assume many other entities other than Iran, their understanding is is deeply inaccurate. It's deeply flawed, and it's largely because they believe their own propaganda. They hire people who know nothing about Iran, very little about Iran. Some of them who write books on Iran who've never been to Iran. And then they also hire like people from Iran who know how to make money. They say what needs to be said. I mean, if I was in the United States, I would never get hired by any think tank or any high-ranking university, or because I say the wrong things. And so the narrative on Iran is reinforced by these people, and they believe their own propaganda. And ultimately, as a result, of these wrong calculations, their policies are flawed and they fail. And they don't learn because they never question their narratives and their assumptions. So they do it again and again, and every time for the last 40-some years, Iran is about to fall. Iran is about to collapse. Just a little, push. It's almost there. We're finished. This is it. It's over. And it goes on and on and on and on, and nothing happens. And then we hear that Iran is over there all the way in Venezuela doing all sorts of nasty things. So that's one problem. The second is, I think, that this is partially goes back to what we were discussing earlier, that everything is now brazen, and that U.S. politicians are just behaving like rogue actors, like thugs, who can just attack anyone, kill anyone, murder soldiers, murder government officials, bomb places, kidnap presidents, and get away with it. I think that's a part of it. But in any case, what Lindsey Graham did and what Trump does only makes ordinary Iranians more hostile towards the United States. It only makes them more suspicious about the intentions of Washington. They obviously were the people who were cheering on the Israeli regime when they were bombing Iranians and slaughtering people in their houses at night as they were asleep. So this doesn't help the United States. And in a way, if I was, in a way, it helps Iran in a bizarre, in a odd sort of way, because it's sort of like Pompeo's tweet. I mean, I think Iranian government officials would have been willing to offer Pompeo money to tweet something like that, the former head of the CIA, I would imagine, because I actually tweeted it and I said, I rest my case. There's nothing, you don't have to argue about over it. You don't have to say that people were arrested and it was clear that they were getting funding from abroad or anything like that. All you have to say is, look, the former head of the CIA is saying that there are Mossad agents among the rioters and so on. So I really think that the United States today has really thrown away its soft power capabilities. It is no longer politically sophisticated anymore, which can be a good thing for the global majority, because that soft power has always been a tool that the United States used to undermine other countries and to get its way. So I personally don't think that Trump is all that different from previous presidents. I mean, the genocide in Gaza was carried out both by Obama and Trump. But
Biden, right? Biden.
Oh, yes, sorry,
Yep.
by Biden and Trump. But I think the crude behavior of Trump, Lindsey Graham, Pompeo, the Secretary of War, the naming of the Secretary, the department, making it the Department of War, the renaming of the department itself, I think, is foolishness, and it only harms the United States. But these people, I think, simply don't comprehend how this hurts the United States, and they just want to have that segment of American society that cheers on war and violence and so on. And there's a segment of American society which is like that. I think they're looking to them to have to reinvigorate their support for the government, rather than looking at the broader destructiveness that this brings about for the United States across the world.
Professor Mohammad Marandi, thank you for joining the Trends Journal. We always love talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Have a good night.